Templeton's Nouveau Riche excerpts. He drew diminishing returns on his capital from various pawnbroking establishments that lined the way. The directors of these dubious concerns offered him leading parts in their slice and dice flicks, which he deferentially refused. Frown houses that roofed energy-efficient frigs. He had heard that such units contained power bars, wine coolers, and individually wrapped cheese slices. The tin stacks protruding from the slat and lead peaks of the houses spewed carbon-colored stife every whence and whither. He thus covered his snout with a sneezer, lest his snot turn to black. Such a force as that which contributes to the perfecting of one's ideas regarding rejections of reality would explain why, he supposed, imagination and reason are more implex than other forms of imbalance. For only through the agency of such conceptual dynamisms can one dictate the true merits of one's own sense of being, in terms of the oblique perceptions by others of one's actual sense of reality, in so much as one's ultimate goals regarding consciousness of function are concerned. Lounging at the sidewalk agogos were myriads of mumblemews, mum-budgetly munching kumquat cakes and cran muffins. The mendicant friar's philosophic reflections were momentarily obstructed by the stink of cabbage and the sorry sight of chess players chug-a-lugging chai from Toby Philpot jugs. As he moseyed past the gastronomic ginks and gobblers, they cast sidelong up and downs at the latex wetsuit he was wearing. weren't in fact complotting at this juncture to besmirch his hitherto unsullied Izzat. Barnacles, he thought. My time's nigh up. What schoolish rot concerning the mind-body problem? When all's said and done, 'twould be better to buy the optional transparency adapters and let bygones be bygones. On the other hand, why not let the resolution enhancement technology take its course? Those common kissing clock poles will see the light after it turns to shit and ashes. Admitting his faults, regretting his past indiscretions, the cunning little canker blossom headed home to prospect for images on his pocket-sized switchboard. The thumbnails he'd compiled over the months were blown up and assembled into a colorful decoupage of cheery office slaves snoozing on pallets, 12-week treatment groups for bulimia, Roger Rabbit plugging powdered garlic soup with goat curd, just add borax, etc. Time to rail against throbbing migraines, he mused. Ever since I took up strategic positions at the underground stations, I've had to challenge and defeat my natural enemies. Once my multiple scan display is downloaded with Marathon Infinity, I shan't be raising my windbrows any longer. Evidently, Statue Man and company have gained access to innovation finger control in their trackballs. Sold their birthrights for a mess of pottage. Clowns. Onion-eyed little beast in a wedding frock fold danced down the lanes of a fast food court, playing a good fork and knife, as it were. The poor little snark scoffed, a bit of growl here and there. Once once our hero had become fully apprised of the situation, poignant images of squandery and strivation haunted the deepest, darkest pools of his inwit. Nothing, he decided, can become resolved in the process of attempting to clarify one's own ideas about animate or inanimate objects, for one can never make these forms correspond to other people's sense of what is concrete or what is merely abstract. The transitions from reflections on one's own existence to the actual formulation of statements apropos to the secondary qualities of tangible objects, such as dogs or umbrellas, that present themselves in unbroken successions of distractions and obtrusions, inevitably draw the subject's attention to the new sets of constantly developing innate potentialities. The underlying truth that's ultimately sought, however, is far more elusive than the objects to which the paths of mystery or cloakings of common sense tend to lead one. The hum and whir of scramjets over ant farms, the squeak of thighs through tubes of caramel leather, the chirrups of misfed sheets in a facsimile machine. Such were the answering looks of love that leveled all parodies of insubordination. I'm in a sorry state, the mendicant friar admitted to himself. I can only kiss the reflections of my beloved. The pin's smart. I checked every radio I could find. Every radio. The junk was cheap, so I used the emergency codes instead. Paper clips or spraying Windex on linoleum buffets. It is said that many moldy warps of the talking nano baby school are apt to feel a pious impulse to recompense their benefactors for ostentations of courtly unction. How recherché, thought the mendicant, uprighteously shaking his head with disgust. The moldy warps unseldom pay homage to their superiors by lip-syncing the sis of deodorant sprays such as right guard, or deforming chiropractic self-adjustments to stimulate the crunch of salt snacks such as cheese curls. Young glitterbag who was crouching smockless in the rear of a drophead. Yes, but the smell, provides the mendicant. let's talk about the victims first. But I haven't made up my mind yet, she retorted. The connection is frail, tenuous, no knockout pills. You speak unceremoniously of pivotal phenomena, he said, as if they were terrorist camisades or whatever. He tilted his rubric towards an old Victorian across the pave from where he parked his gunboats. And yet, my boys drink sparingly, no doubt amusing themselves with cock and bull stories. I must admit, she said, I'm rather ignorant about mental health. On weekends, I have no place in the country, and I've given up on smutty love affairs. He snuggled. The shrewd old bird's need for a vindictive triumph, no doubt. He gledged a squint at the clock tower looming above them. Well, I guess we ought to call it a night then. Just as the Casanova and his paramour were about to part company, Statue Man and his umpteen disciples materialized from behind the pier of a cathedral. Instinctively, the glitterbag consputed her bubblegum and crouched low in the rear of the ragtop to avoid being detected. In less than a twink, Statue Man's big Hulk frame sucked in all the surrounding airspace. Good morrow to you, Professor, he said, extending his sausage-like hand. I see your little missies casting surreptitious Nolans at my deltoids. Ha 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 ha. Proud below the navel, he flexed his bicep and adductors, then thrust forth his groin and wiggled them suggestively. On cue, his disciples sprung their switchblades open and cut a yawning slit through the drophead's retractable roof. Statue Man flashed a floodlight on the scuddy young winklet, cowering in the back seat. Dirty daughter, drink bitter cup to dregs. Ha, 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 ha. Fleering at the blushing Evite, Statue Man's disciples confisced her aquanet. Tickling her silly, they smeared her with lip gloss and eyeshadow. The mendicant friar prescinded from the bad energy and pernicious influences of this ongoing debacle to reflect that, in with the ambit of geometric jungles like Pimpleton, what with all its dilapidated warrens and what have you every which way, pedestrian boutiques like burlap bags and plug-in drugs are deemed signally insalubrious by the cowards that be. Providentially, such materialistic vices are ones from which he himself pointedly abstained. As it churned out, the glitterbag's gaudish fripperies were deadlocked in the boot. All face, the one happy wench was muscled from her drop bed to fend for herself from the gnarly royals and Pimpleton's combat proceeds. Coins into ever larger coffers, ephemeral toys from Kmart are the objects of play in the proverbial rumpus rooms of mysterious castles on corners. Full of comfort and built with money, these heavily guarded faux bastilles serve as creep holes for reclusive monarchs and despots. Behind the walls of these strongholds, the mass masters of the universe are invariously receptioned by belly-dancing magpies. Consequently, the no-nonsense, all-business types on the flip side of the runnel stick steadfastly to their reams of 20-pound, multi-purpose, all-white for copy, but otherwise have no scruples of conscience in regards to sealing classified materials with their catamenial discharges. Sometimes the dank furls in their trunk hose will cause those around them to snizzle, from which phantom viruses wreak havoc out through the greater metro and beyond. For all that, the angels of mercy continually bend their proud necks in an effort to accommodate such faults of character. Many lustrums elapse before the pontiffs of Babel can make head or tail out of toll-free numbers. Thus, the relative ease with which one can gasp for air. Senile, back at the think tanks, the real contradictions, the concepts of being, the extended realities, the quantitative properties, the theories of knowledge, etc., were the true stinkers and monsters for which self-appointed wiselings locked their horns on the racks. Oblivious to the fundamental brainlessness of their overexertions on behalf of the Malversation Board and its bureaus, Statue Man and his disciples waltzed gingerly forward, gyrating their hips to the ubiquitous thumps of sound. In despite of the unsuccessfulness of their lovesick wooings, they followed the inner dictums of their concupiscent jasms. For when all's dead and gone, they were just doing what regular boys will do when they're feeling a bit bonesome. Deep into the bosks of the night, they searched in vain for slobbering dogs with puffed out bellies, indifferent to the fact that a gloom of funny vapors had all but done them in. A keepsake from my mother, the mendicant snarled, as he sucked his digits and surveyed the ugsome moonscape. Beyond the clock tower in the square was an old soldier in a thinning greatcoat, buying scented hair ribbons and birthstones at a fly-by-night gag and vomit. Suppose everyone thinks that there is no likelihood, the mendicant reported, now that the odious Maximus has been dispelled. A scattering of useless data will function as a smokescreen for low-grade agitprop. An insignificant mutation, 'twould seem, but one which is bound to have dire consequences. The mendicant rolled his eyes at Statue Man's legendary dumpishness. All it would have taken the big gazook to prevent his zip drive from vomishing unverified microcodes was a quick call to the memory upgrade hotline. At least it would have ensured that the Bohunk's operating system would be calibrated to function within the confines of officially sanctioned WYSIWYG milieus. At the sound of the gunfire, it dawned upon our hero that when things get bigger and bigger, the world grows older